that your job is George Soros's title in the old empire. That
Right.
was very interesting in terms of, well, what is George Soros's title in terms of what does he do? What
Right.
does he really do in the old empire? Because I think that revolves a lot around crisis management. I mean, he's like he's like the kingpin in crisis management, both in creating
Right.
the crisis as well as reducing it, managing,
No.
flowing with it, basically making money off these crises.
Right. Exactly. There we go. I got it. I'm sorry. This is part of the crisis management. Yeah, because what I was thinking about just in general is that there has to be a funder. And so when you look in the Bible, especially like in Jesus' story, and you're trying to figure out who was bankrolling Jesus, he was just running around all these places, no job, no nothing, and you're supposed to like just how was he feeding these people? How was he getting anything to do any of this stuff? And so when you look into that part of the story a little bit, you find out that he had women, basically Mary Magdalene, Mary of Cleopas, and a few other Marys, because Mary was a title. He had these women that was basically following him around, Mary Martha, that was following him around and making sure these men had everything they need to do what their kingdom building. And so, you know, I have been thinking about this whole concept of like, um how do you build an empire? Because like I told you, in 2022 we did a fast, and the fast was a take back the kingdom fast. And basically from that fast I saw the people who were trying to quote unquote take back the kingdom, but I was like, these are not people who should be in charge of anything. So it was at that point that I started looking into funding mechanisms, like how do you, it's because it's not just the funding, it's also paperwork. Because if you leave one empire to go to another empire, you have to show that the books have been balanced. Like if you're technically, if you become an American citizen, you're supposed to make sure you don't have anything outstanding in the country that you come from, because you're leaving that country and you're going to another country. This is why they started using passports. The passports were to indicate that you were leaving your country of origin and that you had permission and authorization of the God of that country to travel to other places. Like that's the spiritual like connotation of a passport. And so with that in mind, I have just been thinking like, okay, how do we fund this? How do we structure this? So I've done all of this paperwork stuff to get in position to be like the bank, like to be the bank. But then it's like also on an emotional level, what does that look? What this day? Okay, I can't talk about that right now. Okay.
You said to be the bank?
Yeah, to be the
Okay,
bank. Someone
nice.
has to be the bank. Like, you have a Bank of England, a Bank of this. Every
Right.
country has a bank. As a matter of fact, most of the wars that were fought in America have to deal with the establishment of the Bank of America. First Bank of America, Second Bank of America. That's where Hamilton was involved in all of his nonsense. So this whole concept of having and even like you see how people talk about the central banks, right? And how when the central banks come in and take over and all this stuff happens and all this changes. And so it's like, okay, well, if that's a particular issue, like this whole concept of this weird banking stuff that they're always like ruining countries over, trying to get everybody to function under this one world banking system, then there has to be a banker for the Holy Imperium. But it can't just be anybody who's the banker. It needs to be somebody who understands what's going on. Like you can't, this is like where you have your Rockefellers and all, they were the bankers. They were the bankers. They were the brokers. They assigned themselves every job. And so it's not that our banking system in America is broken. It's not. It's that the people are running it are wicked. Like I can go on and on about my interactions with different organizations, but they're just wicked. They refuse to, they're gangsters, right? They refuse to follow the rules. So whoever is your banker also got to be your number one gangster. That's what I learned from this American system.
Yep.
You can't
Right.
have just anybody running your bank because they're gonna run right over you. You have to be willing to, hey, go and get my money. I don't want to hear it. Tell that
Yeah,
person, give me
because
my
then
money.
right, because then you'll take out loan, or the market will take out loans from you, and
Right,
they'll say, "No, fuck you. I'm not gonna pay. I don't care."
right,
So you got to have the big
exactly,
guns. You got, as
exactly.
Roosevelt says, speak
Carry a
softly
big
and carry
stick.
a big stick. Yep.
Yep. Yeah, because if not, they'll just run all over you. And imagine we've got this little imperium that we're trying to build here, which is holy, consecrated, set apart, which means we can't really be involved in a system. Like we can to an extent. This is a like an existential problem that I've been going back and forth with over the last 3 years. On the side of the paperwork and all of that, it's like, how do you be a part of their system without being overcome by their system? Because even the bankers have banks. Like you think that, oh, you go to a bank and that's the bank. No, the bankers have bank. That's what like the Fed is, the Federal Reserve Bank. So like every bank that comes as a real bank has to come through this Federal Reserve. And so tie that in with my research on entrepreneurs from black entrepreneurs from the turn of the century, and you do research into some of the different financial systems that they were running. Like there was a lady in Richmond, she had the very first black bank basically, and it was a penny bank. So people just deposit their pennies. Her bank was so big, they basically burned it down to take it out. Like this is the kind of stuff that they, I mean, always do to people when they want to get them out. But yeah, they burnt down the whole bank just to be able to take her out. This is the kind of stuff that like happens. So it has to be somebody who's not only gangster enough. That's why I was like, I want them to try my gangster because they're gonna see what's gonna happen to them if they try me. You know, you have to be like that, but you also have to be spiritual enough to say, let me get a black candle, because they're gonna have to go. Like we're done negotiating. You got to be willing to even cut off your own family members, whoever, if they playing with you and playing with your money. And so you just can't have anybody do that. That's why I was like, well, and that's if you look at these big NGOs and all this stuff, that's all they do. They're not see. Okay, let's talk about a little bit about what George Soros actually does. He does not actually spend his money. What these NGOs do is they have an account with money in it. Okay, with that account that they have that has money in it, they use that to get credit. Just like we were talking, what was that last week about the guy with the credit cards and the points and all of that. That's what these NGOs, these George Soros and all of them, that's what they do. They literally use the money they have as collateral to get credit. And then when they get the credit, what they do is they put together some little philanthropic organization and they go to like a USAID and then they get guaranteed money. So now they've got money from, so they may like seed fund somebody to get started, because if you don't know anything about government contracting, if you're going to get a contract to do something with the government, especially like something that involves people, you have to have the money in the bank to cover about 2 years of funding. Because when you start a contract, you basically not going to get paid out from the government for 2 years. At least, depending on state, it could be longer than that. Like DC, it could be 2.5, almost 3 years. That's what I've seen. But basically, it's gonna take about 2 years before they ever cut you a check. But once they start cutting you a check, this is what Basint and all of them discovered at the Treasury. Once they start cutting the checks, they never stop. Even if the contract stops, listen to what I'm saying. Even if the contract stops, the checks never stop. And so it's very lucrative. It was very lucrative to get into one of these positions because the checks never stop. And so if you're George Soros, you've got 1,000, 2,000 10,000 of these little organizations that you use your credit in the bank as collateral to get them started. Once the checks start rolling into the government, they pay you back. You haven't spent a dime. Now you have all these organizations that you yourself seeded, so that way they're going to do what you say. So if you say, look, I need y'all to work on this, I need y'all to work on that, y'all do whatever little stuff y'all want to do, that's cool. But I also need you to do this. I also need you to handle this business over here. Oh, we need people to go and protest. We need people, we need signs, we need t-shirts. Oh, we need some kids, do a contest, give away $10, have these kids come in, make them feel special, put it on at a nice place, stay extra, buy yourself the best food, get them some trinkets, and now you've got a whole generation of people devoted and dedicated to your specific goal, like what you want. And you haven't, you spent almost nothing. Like, and you haven't spent anything. No, no, no. You haven't spent anything. The only thing you extended was credit. You didn't actually spend any of your money. And all of them do this. This is what they do. They don't make money off their regular companies. They make money off of, used to make money off of whatever nonprofit thing that they were running. Plus, that's not even to get into the tax credits that you get from running a nonprofit, and also other tax benefits you get from running a nonprofit. So if you have a for-profit company, and I used to teach this to people, if you have a for-profit company, you always have a non-for-profit company that you run side by side. So if you have staff on your for-profit company, you have them work for the nonprofit company for, or you have them work for your for-profit company for benefits, because the IRS has a very generous benefits package that you can give. You pay them from the nonprofit, you write all of that off as tax write-offs, and basically your for-profit company, like a Microsoft, on paper looks like it's making all of this money, but that's because it's not paying anybody from the for-profit side. It's paying them from the not-for-profit side. So this is like well like known and well established. But who knows this system well enough, just a regular person, that they would be willing to implement it, number one, and knows how to protect it. I feel like I'm the only person to do that. So that's my pitch to be the George Soros of the Holy Emperium.
Okay, so the last part. So okay, so based off of, so for the Holy Imperium, the George, like, your position is the banker slash, because I mean George Soros is not a banker,
The
right? Or
mastermind. He's a
oh, the
banker. He's a
mastermind, right?
mastermind. He's a mastermind. He's literally the one who sets a, and that's what the women always do. They set the tone.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
weird that he's,
right.
of course, trying to take on a feminine position, but like I told you, all of these people want to be women. These men are jealous of women,
Mm,
and so instead of letting a, when you, like, for example, the whole Black
yeah,
Lives Matter
right.
thing, right? That was technically ran by women, but on the ground, it was run by women on the ground, like, but even their leader appeared to be this woman, right? But she was one of these queers, and so they're a little bit different, but still it was a woman and woman's energy. That's why it spread so fast. What other movement have you ever seen in America run by a woman?
Yeah, that's crazy. I
None.
guess
Like,
maybe
look
the
at the civil
suffrage, maybe
rights
the
movement.
suffrage movement.
Yeah, but I mean, was Eleanor Roosevelt really a woman? I don't know. That's up to for debate in my eyes,
Well,
but whatever. Like, yeah,
Is Soros even a man?
is he? I don't know. That's a good question. These people are always LARPing in
Because
other energy.
all
It,
these elite I at least I believe a lot of them are inverted.
yeah, could be. I mean, that would be the only thing
Like,
that
look at
would
what's his
explain
name?
it.
What's that, like, government strategy guy? Kissinger. You look at Kissinger's wife.
Kissinger.
Kissinger's wife is a man. I'm almost certain Kissinger's wife is a man. She's like, she has
Yeah,
the skeletal structure of a man, very
of a
similar
man. Yeah.
to Bush's, the first Bush's wife, First Lady
Right.
Bush.
Right. Barbara.
Yeah, where you yeah,
Barbara.
you look at her, and it's Now, I think, though, I will give them credit, that generation did have a lot of testosterone. Like, the women of that
Yeah.
generation had a lot of testosterone. But, either way, um okay, well, going back to the topic with of the sorrow. So,
Right. Something was going
from
on.
that, with the Holy Imperium, um, like, how do you see on the banking side slash also kind of what Soros was doing with, as